The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NBA Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NBA from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NBA Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest stories in the NBA.
We got an old-fashioned staring contest between the Golden State Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga's camp. We got a JK staring contest to talk about. This is updated news to get into. We have the botched business of this whole thing. The Golden State Warriors have plenty of blame to be placed on them. This is not just point your finger at Jonathan Kuminga. It goes both ways. And then we're going to talk fun things, Western Conference, sleepers, teams that could be fun. We may even get into the East. The world is our oyster, Hudson. Let's talk a little JK to start things off. Are you ready to dive into some second apron and apron talk and all the financials that make this thing so fun?
I mean, I was listening up to my guy, Bobby Marks, right before I hopped on just to make sure I had my T's crossed and my I's dotted. But yeah, you need to be like an astrophysicist to really know the ins and outs of this damn thing. But yeah, let's give it a shot.
The reason I got into sports is because I couldn't remember anything else in school. You know, I couldn't do anything. I had to have flashcards for anything and everything. And sports was just something that came natural. And I feel like with this damn second apron stuff, I need the open book test at all times. It's just, it is a little confusing. But basically, Jonathan Kuminga, to put this out there for, my dummies book, Jonathan Kuminga for Dummies, he wants a fit. He wants dollars. But the Warriors have just about all the leverage in this situation. The leverage that Kuminga has is that he could technically wreck the Warriors title window by being a distraction, refusing to play ball, refusing to really sign anything until that qualifying offer date, which I believe is October 1st. And at that point, I mean, maybe someone picks up Melton, maybe someone goes after Horford, or he just says, you know what, forget this. It's a mess. I'm retired. Not necessarily leverage that helps Jonathan Kuminga's career, but his entire leverage is basically screwing the Golden State Warriors, because even if he does sign the qualifying offer, they lose him next year for nothing. The Warriors do want some value in return. So the divorce seems likely, but the issue is the Warriors have now thrown out a contract to Jonathan Kuminga. Jonathan Kuminga said, I am good to go. And he doesn't mind, per the sources, waiting as long as this thing needs to get settled. Meanwhile, we as content creators, can we please expedite this process just a little bit? But Kuminga basically says, I don't think that contract's fair. The Warriors on the other side say, we offer the highest starting salary that you're going to get. There's not a lot of teams with cap space that can offer you anything else. But his agent's going to continue to look for sign-in trades. The Suns and the Kings are the two teams that have showed some interest. Unfortunately, they have nothing to offer the Warriors, or at least that they would offer the Warriors, that Golden State wants. And the issue with this entire thing is that Al Horford is reportedly on standby because of this, because if they commit their $5 million mid-level exception to Horford, then the transaction hard caps them at the second apron and potentially makes it possible for a team to swoop in and throw an offer sheet for Kuminga that the Warriors can't match, losing him for nothing. So the Warriors don't necessarily want Jonathan Kuminga. They just want something for him. Jonathan Kuminga just wants to play basketball. He wants some money. It's a disaster all around, man. As a non-biased party here, what do you make of this entire situation?
I mean, the writing was on the wall. This should have just been done beforehand. Now they're sitting in a spot where they're at a stalemate. Like you said, I mean, they got 9 guys on the roster, I believe, right now. They got to sign, 4 or 5 guys, and they're sitting here going, with their, finger up their butts. Like, what do we do? Mike Dunleavy, it's like, dude, you could have seen this coming. There was clearly a clash with Steve Kerr and Kuminga. He wants to be a go-to guy in the playoffs if that were to happen with whatever team he lands on. And now they're sitting there, and like all these other teams are already moving all the puzzle pieces around. It's like, where do you go? Where's the fit? I saw Keon Ellis get thrown out there from the Kings, but it's like, you could have, like, his value was much higher at one point before other teams made their moves. So it's it's not a great spot to be in. It's really their only piece that they can move right now is Jonathan Kuminga.
Yeah, and the doomsday scenario is basically the one where a team comes in with an offer sheet that the Warriors can't match, and they then have to move around pieces like a Buddy Hield's $9 million contract goes somewhere else to bring in a $5 million contract or something to make financials work in that sense. But the issue is that basically, let's say Kuminga signs a $25 million deal elsewhere in a sign and trade. His incoming salary for the new team counts at the full value. The outgoing salary only counts at 50%. So that means with $12.5 million of outgoing value there, the most that the Warriors can take back the salary match, that's where it gets a little bit iffy with all these aprons and everything that's involved. It is confusing stuff. There's no doubt about it. And the Warriors have to go with some vet minimum contracts, and maybe it's Will Richard on the rookie minimum that could be $1.3 million, but they do not have a lot of money to throw around right now. In fact, they have 9 players on contract for $171 million. They are required to roster at least 14 players, so they have to sign 5 more by the start of the season. Horford is presumed to be $5.7 million mid-level exception. D'Anthony Melton presumed to be a $2.3 million minimum. That's 11 players. They would still need 3 more, and the Warriors would sit at $17 million below the first apron, $28.9 million below the second apron. Do you understand any of this when I'm throwing all these words at you, aprons and everything? Like, I wonder if any of our viewers, this naturally just like clicks to them and they're like, oh, the aprons, I get it. Or if this is just damn confusing to everyone.
No, dude, it's confusing to guys that cover the league consistently. You know, like Zach Lowe is like, I'm getting confused by the aprons. Really, the second apron, to make it simple, it's just look at it like a hard cap. No team is going to enter the season over the second apron. I mean, just call it the hard salary cap. I know they hate putting the word salary cap on anything, but no team is going to go over that second apron. I think like the Cavaliers and Celtics might technically be, as it stands today. They'll make some moves. The one silver lining, if you're a Warriors person, I've heard so many situations where they're like, there's just no way out. You're like, hey, with all these contracts, the John Wall contract comes to mind. They can't figure a way out. These guys are smart. They figure out how to finagle the salary cap or the second apron, first apron, whatever you want to call it. And they end up making moves by being, they do something where they, stretch a contract, things like that, that's above our pay grade, Chuck. And they figure something out to make it work and move these pieces. So that's really what you can hold on to, is that somebody smarter than us is putting together something that's going to make sense for the Golden State Warriors, because they're in a tough spot right now. No doubt about that.
Sticky situation, you could call it. The past business has been botched. Hopefully the future business is better.
We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling, trying to find the best deal? Gametime Zone Deals pick the best deals in your section for you. And with Gametime, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concerts and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, the lowest price guaranteed.
When it comes to the 76ers head coach, what's the one thing he's got to do that he has control of to put his squad in the best possible position?
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We haven't focused a lot on Nick Nurse. We've talked a lot about this lineup. We talked a lot about guys needing to be healthy. We've talked a lot about Joel Embiid and the article that came out on ESPN.com and all that. But when we talk about the head coach here, Keith, if you had to say one thing that Nick Nurse needs to do, I have a few ideas, but I want to know from you. The one thing Nick Nurse needs to do with this squad in this upcoming season to put him in the best possible position to have success that he has control of, that's the caveat, what would it be?
To me personally, the one thing I would say is, find a way of getting more people involved. Like we all know that it's going to be about Tyrese Maxey, Joel Embiid if he's healthy, Paul George as the third star. But, you have to find a way to get people more involved. And when I go back to the first season, 2023-24 season, in the beginning of the season, that ball was moving. I mean, it was now, again, Joel Embiid and Maxey were getting their points. They were the leading scorers, of course, but they got everyone else involved. They all felt like a part of the success. And people forget they lost their first game to the Milwaukee Bucks, 118-117. And then all of a sudden, they went on an 8-game winning streak. They won 8-1. They started off strong where they were 10-3, right? 10-3. But to me, after that, it just seemed like the ball started sticking gradually, So to me, the one thing is he has to find a way to keep other players involved. Like, we know what Quentin Grimes can do, right? If given a chance, right? We know what Kelly Oubre. We know he can attack the rim. We know what Jared McCain can do. I feel like one of the biggest problems that he had was just having guys standing in the corner and not being involved. And the coach, that's up to him to draw plays to get these guys, incorporated into the offense, because I feel like once they feel like a part of everything, everything's going to go smooth.
That's interesting. Getting everybody involved, sharing the basketball, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity to do that with the thing that he doesn't have control of, unfortunately, which is the health of Joel Embiid and Paul George. So again, the caveat here is Nick Nurse is not, lay his hands upon Paul George and Joel Embiid and all of a sudden they're going to be healthy. So this is all stuff within his control. I love that, getting everybody involved, and I think it plays into what I need to see from Nick Nurse this year, which is player development. Yeah. Now, one of the things you can look at with Nick Nurse, and it's other than the quadruple doink, Keith, my other takeaway from that, the way that ended in Toronto, was all the praise that Pascal Siakam was getting. And Nick Nurse just laid it out bluntly in, I believe it was that post-game press conference, and everyone was giving the praise to Pascal, and he just said, look, this guy came to me after his rookie year and said, okay, how do I get better? What do I need to do? And they laid out a plan for him to work on his shooting. And look, you can lay out all the plans you want, unless you have that player, Keith, that is actually going to execute that plan in the offseason. So they actually shoot better from the outside. They show better aggression on the offensive side of things in general. And their defense, not that his defense ever had to get monumentally better, but it still needed to improve somewhat from a young player to what he is now. He did all of it. He checked every box. I'm not going to compare the young guys on this roster to Pascal Siakam because I don't feel that that's fair. I don't want to put that pressure on him. I don't want player comps. I don't like player comps. But the bottom line is you have VJ Edgecombe, all reports, everything we know about him, willing to work. Tyrese Maxey. I'll never forget the story of him and Doc Rivers where he said, all right, at the end of the season, what do I need to do? And Doc Rivers said, well, how about you go on vacation, man? Like, take a break. This is the day after it all ended. And then you also have Jared McCain, who has now had to work his way back from injury. And then you're probably going to have Quentin Grimes as well. We're going to assume that for the time being. These are guys that are fighting for their NBA careers, or a guy that's looking to solidify his NBA legacy as to what he could be for his entire career in Tyrese Maxey. These are four guys, at least, Keith, that are very much willing to work. Three of them very young guys. So when you talk about the thing he needs to do, he needs to insert himself to make sure that these guys, these young guys, their work ethic is not going to waste. They're being very efficient in their practice time, and they're doing everything they possibly can to take the Maxian leaps that we have seen from Tyrese Maxey. I want to see them with VJ. I want to see that with McCain. I want to see it with Quentin Grimes even when he comes back. I want to see it with all these guys. So for me, the number one thing to put this team in the best possible position, with or without Paul George, with or without Joel Embiid, is to be more of a teacher with this team than a coach, especially on the practice court.
Yeah, that's a great one. Because when you look at it, we talk about you said everyone's not going to be a Pascal Siakam, but no offense to Pascal Siakam, but who was Pascal Siakam when he first came into the league? Like, no one expected him to be as good as he is, right?
Absolutely.
You look at Fred VanVleet. He was a undrafted point guard out of Wichita State. Right now, you look at him. Now he's a max playing all-star point guard for the Houston Rockets. And then it goes deeper than that. There was another guy by the name of Chris Boucher, who was in 2017. He goes to Toronto as an undrafted skinny power forward. And right now he's the longest tenured guy on the team. So, now is he a star? No, he's a role player. He's a valuable role player. He's kind of like, a utility guy for him, a junkyard dog, so to speak. But these are guys who Nick Nurse developed, all three of them. And then you look at it, they do have a pretty good development staff. TJ DeLeo, we all know him now as the G League coach, but really he's a player development coach who works well with these guys. As far as Rico Hines, they have Rico Hines open runs. He's a bench coach, but he's actually a player development coach. So that tells you that he's getting paid well. He's doing all these other things. So to me, that is key. They got to develop these guys. I mean, you went out there and Nick Nurse is the reason why Jabari Walker's here. He's the reason why that what's his name? Trendon Watford is here, right? Salas is here. He's the one who made those phone calls. So it's up to him and his development staff to follow what they did in Toronto and turn these guys into undrafted players into kind of sort of quality role players that the 76ers are going to need moving forward.
The thing is, when you talk about these player developmental guys, when you talk about these guys, they're all working with athletes that are known for their work ethic already. I mean, even BJ Edgecombe, who's not a proven NBA commodity yet, one of the reasons Sixers wanted him is because this guy just is a gym rat. And I always love hearing that about these guys. Oh, he's a gym rat. He doesn't leave, he gets his 1,000 shots in a day, like that kind of thing. And I love that about these types of players. So there's no excuse like, oh, this guy just all of a sudden got to the NBA and got lazy. I don't see it. I don't see it with the three guys that I've talked about, four guys, including Maxey. We certainly know it from Maxey. But when you talk about Pascal Siakam, to go back to him for a second, I am curious. Look, all the credit in the world goes to the player to get better because they're the ones that really have to put in the time. But as far as the plan put in place for the player to execute in the offseason, how much of that do you give credit to Nick Nurse and giving that player that much room to grow?
I give Nick Nurse credit for that, but I also give the culture that they had at that time and the players who were on the team. I mean, we think about it. He was like the fifth starter on their championship team. But also, you had Nick Nurse. But, I mean, think about it. You had Kyle Lowry at his prime. He was in the midst of 6 consecutive All-Star bursts. He was Olympic gold medalist. Kawhi Leonard comes in there, the glove, who's, a man of few words, but his work ethic is off the chain. Anybody who knows Danny Green, what Danny Green brings to the table. Marc Gasol shows up. I mean, we're talking about at least 3 Hall of Famers that was in the same starting lineup as him.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? I mean,
yeah.
That's what it is. So when you have that type of culture, that type of veteran leadership, you're only going to get better. I mean, now the thing about Pascal, everybody talks about Joel Embiid's story. But Pascal Siakam's story was a little bit similar too, to whereas he was a late bloomer. And I think that I've told you this before, and maybe I said it on the podcast. I mean, this dude was in monastery school. Like he was going to be a priest, man. He was going to be a priest. Like that's what he was going to do. And he didn't like basketball. And then it was one of those things where he went out there and they had a hoop. And in his free time, he was getting buckets, just shooting the ball. So then all of a sudden he goes to a school that has a basketball and he was trash, but then he got better, right? I mean, seriously. And he got better. But so to me, it's kind of like he had to have some natural ability that had to be fine-tuned because he was a late bloom. I mean, not a late bloomer. He got a late start. But with that being said, I think that Nurse helped out. But also when you have Kyle Lowry in his prime, Kawhi Leonard, Marc Gasol, who came on late, Danny Green. And Danny Green is another guy who was self-made, right? So when you look at those type of people, it's only going to benefit Pascal and Fred, OG, other guys, Chris Boucher, all of them. They all benefited from having these dudes and, leading the way.
Mm-hmm. Now, look, I feel like we always have to have the caveat in here, and I'm sorry to do this again, Keith, but this is all under this is accepting the general thought that you're not going to have Paul George and Joel Embiid 100% healthy throughout this entire year. Now, we're all hoping for it. We're all rooting for it. I don't think any of us are betting on it, unfortunately. So when we talk about Nick Nurse, it's not like, oh, Nick Nurse does this and now they're contenders. No, this is Nick Nurse does this, and this team is in the best possible position so that when you do have PG back, when you do have Joel Embiid starting up his season, they're, again, in the best possible position to have success.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
All right, guys, it's that time. We are reviewing Karl Anthony Towns' first season as a Knick.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast.
Alex, tell us how awesome is Karl Anthony Towns in his first year as a Knick?
Yeah, let's get right to that meat and start building around it. So
that's been the goal of this podcast from day one.
Just to get to that line, we've peaked, folks, as a society and as a podcast. All right, so Karl Anthony Towns, All-NBA third teamer, made the All-Star game in his first season as a Knick. 24.4 points, 12.8 rebounds per game, which was a career high, and 3.1 assists per game. All on 52.6% from the field, 42% from three, and 82.9% from the free throw line. Gavin, if you want to just find, and look, these numbers will be supported once we get into the percentage and the rate stats and all that stuff too, but real easy, low-hanging thing to look at in terms of what he did this season versus what he's done in past seasons of his career. Lowest three-pointers attempted per game since 2018 to 19. So in like 6-7 years, the lowest amount since then, with the 4.7 attempts per game, despite having nearly the best 3-point percentage of his career. He was 0.001% off of that because he shot a career high 42.1% in 2017 to 18, shot 42% this past year. So ironically, I guess weirdly, like he shot his highest percentage and then took what was his lowest to date in 3-point attempts the next year. This past year shoots his best, hopefully then increases his 3-point attempts next year, because I think that this was, in my opinion, without a doubt, the best offensive center season for a Knick since Patrick Ewing. I don't think there's anyone that can even begin to compete with that unless you really, really, really value field goal percentage as a metric, in which case maybe you make a case for Mitchell Robinson or Tyson Chandler. But as far as offensive, I'll even just say big man seasons, you can even throw Julius Randle in there. I think this is probably
first season of Amar Stoudemire, maybe really pre All-Star break. That was like the only comparable thing, and we only saw it for 30 games, 35
exactly.
games.
Yeah, 35 magical games, but 35 games nonetheless. Either way, one of the best offensive big man seasons in Knicks history. I would say one of the best 3 or 4 best offensive seasons of the last 20 years when you really consider like just how little he was used relative to his efficiency and like how little game to game that they seem to draw up for him. I mean, I know there's some more stats that kind of support this, but to me, Gavin, I just walked away from so many games thinking, man, I wish that Cat was just more involved in the game plan for this game, because unlike a Jalen Brunson, who, like we talked about in the last episode, was relied upon so much to just like be the alpha and the omega with this team. It always just felt like you had this really powerful weapon sitting there that you just refused to pick up with Cat sometimes. And I don't know if it was by like not wanting to involve him, or if it was just as simple as Tibbs didn't do enough to get him involved. And considering Cat is not a throw him the ball and let him cook kind of player, it just kind of worked to his detriment. But we saw time and time again when he was involved in the offense early and often, he took over plenty of games and had some really, really high highs with the Knicks this year.
Yeah, and look, the big shift is something I don't want to harp on it because we've talked about it a million times and people are tired of hearing about it. But teams around December started guarding the Knicks very differently, and I think it was really like January, February where this became ubiquitous. But the smarter teams were putting their wings on Cat, putting their bigs on Josh Hart. Famously turned the Knicks offense from the second best in the NBA and one that would have ranked as I think at that point they had the fourth highest offensive rating in NBA history, maybe at one point the second highest offensive rating in NBA history. Like they were absolutely cooking. And a lot of that was based on the Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns pick and roll and pick and pop, which to your point, like it was zero prep. This offseason was immediately the most productive screening duo in the NBA. Cat, you go back to November, he was taking just under 6 threes per game. That was far and away his highest volume month of the season. He was shooting 43% from three over that month after a 4-game sample size in October where he shot 73% from three. He was barely taking any, but he could not miss at the start of the season, and he was getting tons of shots up. He was getting tons of good looks at the rim, and I felt like the good times were going to roll forever. And then teams made that pivot, and Tom Thibodeau refused to make the logical follow-up pivot, which would have been to start Deuce McBride over Josh Hart, and that really impacted Karl Anthony Towns' season. I think the other stuff that impacted him was Jalen Brunson, like, was very good with Cat when the reads were very, very simple. And yet, our buddy Prez put together a whole video around midseason pointing this out. There was so much low-hanging fruit, and Brunson would consistently miss the hook pass back to Cat on the perimeter. Like, if anyone watched our episode yesterday, I was talking about how Brunson was ball hoggy early in the Pistons series, and you could see his teammates getting frustrated. I have such a clear visual in my mind of Brunson running a pick and pop with Cat popping. And remember, Detroit stupidly opened that series guarding Cat traditionally, right, with the center on him, and Cat popping behind the arc and him being wide open, and Jalen Brunson just ignoring him to shoot like a midi pull-up over two guys. And that is just an easy hook pass that should be a part of every point guard's repertoire. And I'm hoping Mike Brown is driving that home to both of them this offseason, saying, hey, I'll use the phrase again, there's a bunch of meat left on that bone. And even if you want to play like double big lineups and you want the floor to be clogged, which I don't think they should, but maybe they will, there are a lot of ways to get Cat easier shots. And if you play 5 out, then there's a million ways to get him easy shots. And I look to that Pacers series, right, where Cat was just completely dominant. And again, it was an example of like when a team guards him traditionally, which Indiana chose to do the entire series, like there just aren't a lot of answers for the guy, right? He was at 25 and 12, 50% from the field, 30% from three, 76% from the line, and just had some absolutely monstrous games in there, particularly game one. He slowed down a little bit from there. But I think to your point, especially when you take into account the multiple injuries he dealt with, the knee, the bone spur in his thumb, like there was just, there are a lot of ways he could be even better than he was this season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I think it just comes down to creating opportunities. And to your point, like, I think that it was just, I guess when they started putting the wings on him, I just found I consistently was always thinking, why aren't they attacking that in a way? And they found ways to do it sometimes with getting the ball inside or whatever. But I think that he has the ability to punish guys that way. I also think that if you just get a little more creative with, off-ball actions, which I think is what has been the biggest issue for the Knicks under Tibbs, is just, I think, a lack of off-ball movement and lack of like guys working to get open off of the ball rather than just focusing on who has the ball and setting screens for them or whatever. I feel like if you just started working things where you try to, hey, Josh Hart is being guarded by the big, Cat's being guarded by the wing, try to create an off-ball screen or an off-ball action to make them get onto the right man again, and then get that matchup that you want. And then Cat can attack that person off the dribble, or shoot a 3 on them or whatever. If that center, hedges a little too much and stays too much to the inside. It's all those little things, that I hope that Mike Brown and his assistant staff, maybe Pablo Prigioni, fingers crossed. We're hoping that maybe he ends up on the Knicks, but I think it's those sort of things that I want to see more personally. But we can talk a little more about some other stats that came up for Cat. Also, just talk about some of the big questions, such as I think this is kind of the ultimate one. Like, is he the ultimate co-star for Jalen Brunson going forward? Is this the guy that you want to build around with Jalen Brunson, if indeed Jalen Brunson is the locked-in 1A superstar on this team? And can a lineup be built around them that features Cat at the center? Does Cat have to potentially move to power forward and have a player like Mitch out there for this to work? Does it even matter? Like, if that works, does it even matter what position Cat plays as long as things do work?